Hi, today's tutorial is going to take you through preparing for inquiry. The first thing you'll do is log on to the rimsbtsa online data system. Then you'll locate the Fact tab and go down to the program year in which you're doing Fact. What loads next is called the status record. This is where you will document and keep track of all of the work that you do during your program year. You will notice that it is arranged in the same order as your components of induction. So you will start here with the Continuum of Teaching Practice, the yellow section. This is where you did your initial review. Most of you have already completed these, which is why they are marked off. The next thing you would do is look at your preparing for inquiry phase. During this tutorial, we will go through each one of these documents. Remember that in this area, we will be looking at the context of your classroom and the data of your demographics and your student populations. First, we will look at your KWOL chart. This is important to complete before your support provider does their initial observation. This is where you will look at what you know about your professional practice, what you want to know about your professional practice, maybe areas of growth, and also what you would like your support provider to specifically observe during their observations. After the initial observation, you will come back to this document and reflect on how the observation has helped you learn about your teaching practice. You'll always want to be sure that you use the button "Click here to save" after you enter any information on the RBO. There are two ways to navigate back to your status record. You can use the navigation menu and just select the document on the left, or you can click at the top where it says "Back to the status record" and go back to the entire overview. Next, we're going to look at the class profile. Here is where you will add information about individual students. You will want to list information about every student in one class period if you are a secondary teacher. If you are an elementary teacher, you will want to enter all of your students into this database. After you enter one student, you click Add Student and it will clear the field for a second one. There are 3 pages of your class profile. Ask more detailed questions about students who are gifted and talented, English learners, and students who have medical needs or special needs and would be on an IEP or an SST. You would want to complete all the information and click Save down at the end of each page. The next document we're going to be looking at is the classroom layout. The way that this document is laid out, it asks that you upload your classroom design on a separate sheet of paper. So you can draw it or you can use the computer and then browse your computer and upload that document. Please enter your rationale for the way that your class is laid out in the bottom right here on the form. If you are a virtual induction teacher and you teach online, you can simply write into your rationale here that you teach in a virtual environment. Next, we will be looking at the School and District Information and Resources page. Most of this information you can get from the School Accountability Report Card. There is a link on this document at cde.ca.gov DataQuest where you can access your School Accountability Report Card and get most of the information. Again, there are 2 pages to this document. Next, you would want to gather data about how you ensure positive communication with your students and their families. Also, how do you communicate with your hard-to-reach parents, and what adjustments do you make to be more accessible to them? After you finish documenting the information here, be sure to click to save. Next, we will look at your site orientation checklist. This is really a guideline for talking with a site administrator or their designee about some important information about your school site. You'll find out your site staff responsibilities, beginning and end of your contract day, what the school's homework policies are, the attendance policies, how you would access your CUME records for your students, when you have translation services available and who do you go to for these type of things. After you finish having this conversation with your site administrator or their designee, you can either print this form and have them sign it or indicate that you have had this conversation and then click here to save. One of the most important things you'll do in preparing for inquiry is having your support provider observe your classroom teaching. This is called the initial observation record. Notice that this document is to be filled in by your support provider. They will fill in what content standard you plan on teaching, and back on the KWOL chart, you had written in what you would want your support provider to observe. Remember that your support provider is there to be a support to you and to help you reflect on your teaching practice. After you and your support provider have a conversation following your initial observation, you will want to be sure to go back to your KWOL chart and complete the Learned section of the KWL document. Right here. Reflect on what you have learned and what key evidence supports your new learning. It is also in this summative reflection record where you're going to give a very specific overview of your areas of strength and your areas of emphasis of concern. This information will be taken both from your CSTP marking of your developmental levels and the conversation that you have after your initial observation with your support provider. After you have filled in these sections, you will want to be sure to click here to save. This information will be used again when we start your inquiry on your IIP or your individual induction plan during Cell 1. There are two other parts of the preparing for inquiry component, and that is doing your IEP and either an SST or a Section 504 meeting. You will need to do one IEP meeting and either an SST or Section 504 meeting during your 2 years of induction. If you are an SB 57, you would need to do 2 meetings during the year, as in an IEP and an SST, or an IEP and a Section 504 meeting. You would just click on these note-taking guides, enter your information directly into the form, or you can print them out and upload them here. You can see that they are fillable forms, and then of course you'll want to be sure to save the information, or if you choose to do it on your own, say Word document, you could then browse and upload that document here. After you've finished gathering all the data of your students and your classroom context, you will once again be looking at your continuum of teaching practice. You will want to go back to the document, the continuum of teaching practice. This again is reflective of a conversation that you will have with your support provider. You'll remember in your initial assessment, you looked at simply just the standards, the CSTP 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on pages 5 and 6 of your CSTP booklet, your Continuum of Teaching Practice booklet. At that time, you only marked the standards. Now you're going to go in under the Preparing for Inquiry in your Continuum spreadsheet and enter the new date. And again, your levels should be the same. If you choose to focus on Standard 1, you would go ahead and keep the standard level the same, so it would be applying. We're assuming not much would have changed in the last couple days or weeks. But now what you're going to look deeper at is the marking that you did for each elemental level of that standard. You're getting this information from the Continuum of Teaching Practice booklet, from the conversation that you would have had with your support provider. Remember that if you mark anything other than emerging, you will want to go over to the right and also enter evidence in the evidence column. You are only required to focus on one standard for each inquiry. However, you may do more than one. When you are done, you will want to save this document and send a copy to your support provider. There is the option for you to browse and upload and save that spreadsheet to the Continuum of Teaching Practice page on the RBO, but it is not required. You will not need to upload the spreadsheet until the impactive inquiry at the end of your program year. Remember that the purpose of going through preparing for inquiry at the same time as Continuum of Teaching Practice is so that you can learn more about your teaching environment by identifying the challenges, investigating resources, and gathering information about your students so that you can get a focus for your first inquiry.